Hello guys, welcome to a 13th lecture of a Gemini Code Assist series, and in this video I'm going to talk about my workflow for vibe coding. Okay, so what I usually do is like when I was working on in my previous startup, I did build two projects using vibe coding, and one of them we actually sold it to a big MNC for their as a POC, and they are now doing some research work on like how they can integrate that project into their workflows. Okay, so I'm going to talk about a workflow that I usually follow. First is definitely the research and requirements gathering. This is my first stage. In this stage, what I do is basically I talk with ChatGPT for like half an hour, 1 hour. At this time, I use ChatGPT to brainstorm and gather requirements. I also ask ChatGPT deep research feature, which is very important to analyze competitors' projects. Then I go about thinking about like what differentiating factors I can add, like in terms of blockchain, in terms of AI. My previous startup was on a Web3 was from a Web3 domain. So I usually think about like whether I can add AI here, or whether I can add Web3, or in what sense I can add them. Okay, and finally, after doing this multiple iterations of this stage, research and requirements gathering, at this time I finally think about like, okay, these are the requirements that I have for my project, and then I go for the next stage. Okay, at stage 1 I only think about like building a POC. Okay, not a full-fledged project, just a POC to get my hands on, and so that I can think about like where are the different bottlenecks in terms of what tech is basically missing, or what technologies are not there maybe at the right stage for me to kind of integrate right away. And maybe I can not some technologies are not that groomed right now, right? So maybe I cannot implement them right away in my project, or some libraries are not available. So by building a POC very quickly, what I get is a quick analysis of like what tech is available, what tech is not available. Okay, so to build a POC, let's say what I do is I generally implement my front-end using Next.js and TailwindCSS, right? Next.js is basically a front-end framework to build applications, and it's basically built above the React. You can think of it like that. And Next.js is basically opinionated. So basically it tells you that, hey, this is how you should build an front-end application. Okay. For backend, I generally don't start with a custom or a different backend thing like a Node.js or a Spring Boot. Not in the stage of POC. I generally try with the Next.js APIs only, right? And Next.js API routes are good enough for when the POC is kind of starting. Okay. For database, I generally use PostgreSQL with Prisma ORM, right? Prisma is something that you can use directly with Next.js. And basically what it does is you don't have to write raw queries. Instead, what you can do, you can write in terms of JavaScript syntax to kind of interact with the database. That is what ORM is, basically object relational mapping. At every point of time, thinking about version control is very important, because during vibe coding, what happens is sometimes when you're building a project and something gets messed up, right? So what you feel is, hey, I just have to start from scratch. It has happened with me multiple times. It should have happened with you if you are doing a lot of vibe coding. And this is where this version control kind of a thing is very important, right? At every major chunk like setup, when you're setting up the project, or when you're building a new auth feature, at every point of this time, create a snapshot using the GitHub, right? Okay, and then this is the stage. Let me zoom out here. And this is basically the stage where I think about like what vibe code tool I want to use, right? So basically this one, since this is a Gemini Code Assist course, so I'm going to talk about like how you can do it with Gemini. Okay, so this is Gemini project Initialization. I've been using Cursor and Vercel stuff a lot for vibe coding, and this is the first time actually I used Gemini Code Assist, and it was fairly decent, right? And let's say, so basically the requirements that we have and the setup I want to do, based on these two guys, I asked ChatGPT to generate a gemini.md file for me, right? We already know what gemini.md file is. We discussed in the last project. It's kind of a blueprint of the project. Okay, we document project goals, setup instructions and features, and also a timeline of how these features I want to be building, like first this feature, then this feature, then this feature, and so on and so forth. Once this Gemini.md file is built, now my Gemini Code Assist extension, or if you're building it with CLI, has a lot of context on how this guy, me, wants to build this project. Now let's talk about the coding workflow. So I generally don't use CLI a lot, but I have made a lot of videos about CLI. It's because I wanted to tell you that as an engineer, you have a lot of powers with CLI. But generally, if you're building a POC or something like that, then what you'll do, you will kind of start with VS Code with Gemini Code Assist extension to build your project. And the coding workflow, let me talk about that. So what I'll do, once my gemini.md file is ready, I'll open VS Code with Gemini Code Assist extension and make sure the agent mode is enabled. What we'll do, we'll start implementing features step by step inside Nextjs frontend and API routes. Like once the setup is done, basically you will ask this agent to kind of set up the inside directory, set up my Nextjs project, and make sure you also tell that, hey, configure the TailwindCSS. TailwindCSS is actually a CSS library, and basically you can make your front end look better, right? And we don't have to know these technologies a lot in today's world. We can just ask these LLMs to kind of generate the CSS code for us, at least for the POC stage. Okay, once the setup is done, what you'll do, basically you in the gemini.md file, for example, if you have your gemini.md file, and we know, right, in the last video we discussed now that in gemini.md file we have a lot of things like setup instructions, project goals and features, right? So what you can just select the feature. You can just select this feature, and then there is a tube light icon, right? In the tube light icon you select it, and then you say, hey, generate code. So what will happen, it will go to the chat prompt, agent is enabled, and this agent, what will do, it will take the selected item in the gemini.md file and start generating the code for that feature. Okay, at this point of time, once the code is generated, you are satisfied, you can make a checkpoint both via chat using Gemini CLI, and you can also make a GitHub snapshot for that, right? So that you can always revert back to the previous one, which was kind of a stable version. Okay, so this is how I do it. And then basically, yes, that is what I've written here. At each major milestone, save a checkpoint in Gemini, create a git commit, like setup could be one git commit, auth could be one, and different feature models could be one commit, and so on and so forth. Now let's talk about the deployment part. So for deployment, what my usual strategy is this. So Nextjs, both front and backend, I can deploy it in Vercel, right? And if you have a customized backend, you can deploy it in Render. Render is offering some free things, right? It will be slow, it will be idle in nature, but yeah, that is still good enough for you. Okay. Then for database, if you have your PostgreSQL database, you can deploy it on NeonDB. It has a very generous free database structure, right? And if these free tier services are very slow for you while you're demoing or something, what you can do, you can always try this, record a short demo of your project and upload it to your portfolio website. Okay, because always it may happen that these services are sometimes slow, at least for the free tier, right? For the premium tier, they are going to be very fast, but free tier, sometimes they are slow. So what you can do, you can record a demo video and put it on your portfolio website, so that anyone, when you're sharing with your interviewer or anything, they can just see that video that, hey, this is what this guy has built, right? So it gets a picture of it. And live demos sometimes fail, right? Live demos fail a lot of time. So, and live demos also, since we are not like really great project experts while building these POCs, what happens is in the live going through the website, it's not always very straightforward. But if you record a video, you can always put more audio to it about how you have built, what you have built, so that it gets like in 2 to 3 minutes, the other person on the site gets a quick understanding of what your project is. Okay, so this was a very theoretical video. I just wanted to share my workflow around wipe coding. Like if I have to wipe code a POC, and if I have to use Gemini Code Assist, then this is how I will do it. Okay, so that's it for this video. In the next video, we'll conclude this course, and this was a very interesting course that I tried for you guys. And let me know how was this course for you, and maybe we'll try building some projects in the next cursor course. So next course is going to be on cursor, and yeah, we'll see you there. Bye.